absence of any members of the public, we shall just reiterate that Richard's recording the meeting. If anybody else is wanting to record the meeting, it'd be helpful if you just declare it now. Okay. So we've got apologies for absence from Councillor Bennett, Councillor Fernandez and from Councillor Lyles. The reasons have been given and shared. We're going to receive the apologies, but are we all happy to give approval to all three for their reasons for absence? Thank you. To receive member and officers' personal disclosable pecuniary interest in items on the agenda. So does anybody have anything to declare? Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, as usual. Item 232476 for Friends of Cliff Wreck. Thank you.
And the clerk.
Item 232480 tenancies. My husband is on the waiting list for a garage.
Any more for any more? Okay. To consider written requests for new DPI dispensations.
The only one to note is Councillor Collins, which I think was circulated by the clerk a few days ago. So
Yeah.
just to note that.
Okay. To consider whether any items on the agenda should be discussed in private session. We're all happy to have this in public? All right. So to confirm the minutes of the previous committee meeting, so that's the Financial Management Committee meeting from the 20th of September, minutes numbered 23-24-53 through to 23-24-69 inclusive. Any comments? Okay, well, I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilson seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. So, on to grants. Just give me a moment if you touch. So, to note the updated rolling list of grants awarded. Deputy Clerk.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point, God, it's so hard getting people who've received grants from us to even acknowledge that they've got the money. It's so frustrating. I waste so much time just emailing people, just trying to get them to say whether the money's reached their account. So we've got there's five people from the last round of grants who still haven't told us they've even got the money. And that's me chasing them multiple times. I just wanted to express how frustrating all of it.
Which are the five organisations?
It is Hepworth Band, Haydedge Residents, Holmfirth Film Festival, and Waldale Wanderers.
Is there another one, or was one of those a double?
I think that's it. Actually, 4, not 5.
Okay, those are the ones that have responded.
No, they haven't responded.
Would you chase them again?
Of course, yeah, I can do. I'm just finding it very frustrating.
If it's only held back on the concept of Haydedge Residents, and we can
Right,
get
thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what the problem might just be that I'm emailing the wrong people. I think in terms of not getting as we come to next, the grant evaluation forms, I think personnel might have just changed.
Okay.
I'm chasing the wrong people.
Well, as a suggestion, colleagues, perhaps the relevant ward councillors should be copied in with a request to
That's a good idea.
support that.
Yeah, like it.
We're all okay with that?
Yeah. Could we put something on the form? Maybe something on the form, I don't know. Worse the effect that if you don't do this, then...
You won't be considered for any further ones.
That is a fact.
Does that say?
It doesn't say that yet. No, but
That's what we said.
We've already agreed that.
we have agreed that already. That is a fact.
So we'll move on to part 2 then. To note the following newly completed grant evaluation forms. Okay. So, is there anything in specific to note off of these, Rich?
I don't think so. I mean, I think some of them have been very good. I thought I'd be really pleased. You know, it's nice getting the ones with photographs, and like I said, it's just chasing again the ones that haven't applied, and some of these are like a year plus down the line. It's a bit frustrating.
Lots of pictures of being nice. There's actually, you're right, actually, there is some good publicity for it. So, part 3, to consider. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Where we're at. Sorry, Councillor
I
Barker.
was just going to suggest, lovely though the photographs are on the report form, it might suggest that people only send in one representative photograph.
Right, okay.
Because what you're trying to do is evidence what's happened, so you can choose one photograph, because they're taking up an awful lot of space on a lot of computers. So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I know the temptation to send in several photographs, but I think perhaps they should be reduced.
Councillor Phil.
That Magdale Tree Survey on the Village Community Trust, I've worked there over years alongside Kirklees and independently. Doesn't Kirklees now manage that Magdale Tree Department? Or surely they will come out and do a tree survey free of charge? They still do that, I know they do, because I was speaking to somebody last week behind me. I just wondered, because I've been given a grant for Magdale Tree Survey.
Yeah, okay, so.
And Kirklees will carry it out to standard 3998, which is a British standard law tree work.
Right.
And I just wondered why they haven't gone down that road rather than.
They might not be aware.
What was that number?
British standard 3998. 3998.
3998.
That was all England.
Is that revision there, or subsection 2?
Yeah. Paragraph 3, I can recite it for you if you want.
Just for one
Councillor
moment, I
Wilson,
actually
I just
thought you know what we were talking about, Councillor Wilson.
Tree law. Most of those will be covered by what's called a blanket TPO.
Good time expert, isn't it?
Well, a man that knows a little, never too old to learn, I know it all.
Okay, so have we paid that money over? Oh, actually, we did. Because it looks like it's already happened.
Yeah, the survey's already. I thought
That's why they're all
did I not
party.
send it out to you?
Yeah, no, but I was just thinking in terms of Councillor Fenwick's comments, if it's already happened.
For future reference, it is worth noting.
Yeah, we'll have a look at it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Hobbs.
Can I just say, the photos I think are excellent publicity, and the one project that I thought was brilliant was the Friends of Pomley and the work that they've done, and because they've done quite a variety of things, I think showing that variety of photographs, particularly when we're looking to promote the work and let everybody know how much the council is actually doing, I don't think we should limit them.
Just on that one, it's only happening that one there. To download them onto a Word or paste them onto a Word document, it doesn't
To reduce them.
take the same thing. And if we need any for publicity, we could request the original, which could come in its original format. So perhaps we could keep them, but just on a lesser document, so we're not taking much hard drive space up.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Councillor Barker.
So just following that up, I mean, I think we may be reconvening the grants working party, so this is something that can be put to that as part of the working party.
Okay, so we'll move on now to part 3. What's the reference? What's this one? 39. 39.
It's numbered grant number 39 of the year.
Right, so thank you. So, to consider a request from Fair and Funky to change the scope of their project. So if you remember, the last meeting they asked for £1,500, we agreed to pay them half and said that they should look to find the money elsewhere. Rich, correct me if I'm mistaken, what they've come back and said is that actually they now want to apply just for half to do less without having to find the money elsewhere, which kind of isn't really in the spirit of what we've said. Now, this 50-50 isn't a formal policy of the council. It may be something that comes in, depends upon the outcome of that working party, but it is what we said last time. So we're not bound to it. And I understand there was a comment that the case budget would carry the difference.
Well, they did. Their working group did vote to pay that from their budget when they met. You shouldn't. Don't even consider that. It's just a by the by.
Okay. So they've resubmitted.
They've not resubmitted. That's the same grant. Is
amended then, is it?
No, nothing's changed. They've asked us to change the scope of the application. So that's just the original application redacted. That's their email about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Councillor Wilson.
So are they saying then that if they don't get the amounts, they'll only do half their work, effectively?
So the way I'm reading it, correct me if I'm mistaken, is if we want them to do the whole lot, we'll have to find the other 750. If they're only getting 750, they've asked them if they can just do a reduced programme of work. So effectively, we've got perhaps three options. One is to make a full award. The second option would be to confirm that we're okay with them to actually reduce the scale of their work to the 750. The third option is to say no. Councillor O'Reilly.
So it looks as if they're just going to do 10 school assemblies, so they're not going to do the workshops. Yeah. I'm just wondering why that costs any money, really.
Well, we had
Not that I don't want them to get the money, but
yeah, I think we had that discussion previously where we'd said the Parish Council had funded the the smoothie bank, yeah. And we've done that with an expectation that actually it wouldn't be sat in somebody's garage gathering dust, it would be getting used. So when we funded that, I think the expectation was it would be getting out and about. Indeed it does do, but yeah, that's what they're asking for. That's what
I think it's given the nature of the offer last time of half the money towards there, which was more than generous given the eco bike or the electric bike we've got on board already. That offer should stand with them there. That should they wish to have the £1,500, then they should at least try and make an effort to meet with us halfway on that. With my proposal.
So which one of the three would that be?
Well, that's the original offer stands. Offer.
Okay.
So just to clarify that, so the whole package, but only for 750.
Yeah. So effectively, if we go down reiterating the terms of the grant, that's from what they've said, that will be nothing. They've said that they can't find the money, so it won't go ahead. So
I think I think our point should be that. I mean, the fact that they're saying they haven't got time to look for other grants seems a bit cheeky, really. I mean, there are grants out there. They seem to just be suggesting that they haven't got the time to look for them.
for my money, I think this is something I'd like to see formally within our policies. I think once it's formally within our policies about having to find co-contributions, then it's easy enough to have that expectation. And so I'm personally, I'm more minded to say, well, we're going to stick with the 750 and we'll just have the 10 assemblies. There's also a bit in it that says we've already made a decision, and you know, is everybody going to ask us to review our decision whenever they get a decision that doesn't suit? But these have done it. It's in front of us now. Do we have any other views, Councillor Blacker?
Sorry, mine's probably pretty much the same as yours. I mean, I think if we don't give them the 750, we're depriving 10 schools of workshops, and I do think this is on an issue which is, you know, central to what the parish council is trying to do. And people do absolutely love the Smoothie Blight, and I'd suggest we stick with the 750, but at the same time make it quite clear that we're not entirely happy that they haven't managed to raise the rest of the money.
Okay, so before we move to formal proposals, is there anybody who thinks we should go the whole hog?
I'm not sure we can do that. In terms of the motion, that's not, in terms of the consideration, that's not what they've asked for.
But they don't decide what our decision is, do they? But I don't think there's any.
Sure we can.
I don't think there's any takers anyway, is there? So, if I take Councillor Blacker, so that's the 750 already awarded for a scaled down programme. Okay. The counter would be effectively to say, take the grant on the terms offered or don't take it at all. And from what they've said, that would be nothing. So, Councillor Blacker has made the proposal. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Blacker's proposal? Councillor Holmes. Councillor Brooke has made the proposal for take it on the original terms or not at all. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fenwick. Okay, we're just going to do this simply by an either or vote. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand for Councillor.
I'm not quite sure what the difference is. Same amount of money we're talking about, isn't it?
No.
No, I was talking about not
Sorry.
giving them.
That's talking about
Zero.
So well, if Fair and Funky stick to the guns and say that they can't raise it, the outcome will be zero. So either they go and find the other 750 or they'll get nothing. That's Councillor Brooks' proposal. Councillor Blacker's proposal is to allow them to have the 750 granted, but to ease the terms of that so that they're only doing part of that programme. So we're just going to do a simple either or vote. So if you're voting in favour of Councillor Blacker, please don't indicate just yet. Raise your hand if you're supporting Councillor Blacker. If you're supporting Councillor Brooks' proposal, I will come to that afterwards. If you're abstaining, it will be really helpful. But we'll go there. So, all those in favour of Councillor Blacker's proposal, raise your hand now, please, and indicate. So we're on 2, 4, 6. Okay, thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Brooks' proposal, raise your hand now and indicate. We're on 4. Thank you. And unless I'm very much mistaken, we have no abstainers there. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Lovely. So Councillor Blacker's proposal succeeds. Okay. Thank you for that. So item 4, to note, Friends of Cliff Wreck. Has there been any update for this, Rich?
I haven't heard anything. I don't know whether Councillor Blacker can be allowed to speak on it and give us an up-to-date. Do you have an
By the power vested in me, I enable you to speak.
There is no update. The Friends of Cliff Wreck are waiting for a definitive statement as to whether or not the shelter is dangerous. And given that we don't know, we are not going ahead because we need a certain amount of time to cancel the band and so on.
Okay.
I assume, well, maybe I preempted something there. We have a meeting tomorrow at which we'll make a definitive decision.
Okay. So, if you'd be so kind as to let the client know, it would be helpful. Thank you. Item 5, to note, Climate Action Communications and Engagement Standing Committee at the meeting has voted to recommend to Council to via funds from its climate emergency budget lines to the FNN budget lines to fund those grant requests. Help me out here, Richard.
Yeah,
were these all the ones that we'd asked for that have been approved?
Yeah, I mean, they basically said to me just to take it from wherever it made sense, really. So I'll just describe where the money's come from, but all you really need to know is towards the end where it is basically saying that the community assets pot will now have £45,779.40 remaining to spend on the projects and events. Will have £4,285.34 remaining to spend.
So that we're a bit lopsided there, then, aren't we? Community assets is quite high and projects is quite heavily depleted. Is it 2050? Is that right? 20 grand on projects, 50 on.
2053, yeah.
Okay.
Can we move across?
You would need to go to council. I suppose the point would be that in other times where things like this have happened, we've said if all the grants gone, it's gone. That's down to this committee to decide. Now,
We'll have had the big ones, won't we? All about Christmas and the festivals.
that's true.
Okay.
It's up to you to decide as a group.
Well, for this item, we're just noting it. I think it's really a case of we just need to bear that in mind in February.
Well, it needs to be done at next council, really, because council has to approve the move. You know, if you're wanting to via it between budget lines, it has to go to council, so you have to make a decision. Is there just one council meeting?
No,
between
we've got one at the end of
two,
January as well.
Oh, okay.
We'll have a better chance of knowing in January what's coming in and we're not.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So let's have it as an agenda, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So item 6 is just to note the next grant round. Item 7, to consider reconstituting the grants working group. So I think we've already agreed that we were going to do that, but we can take a formal resolution on it to reconstitute the grants working group. Are we looking at giving it a terms of reference now? Is that what we're
No, I
looking
mean,
at?
I think you just approving that it exists and who's going to be on it, basically.
Okay.
Who wants to join it.
Okay, so everybody who's interested, can you raise your hands? Okay. 4 should be plenty. So, we've got Councillor Holmes, Councillor Blacker, Councillor Kirby and Councillor Cullen.
You will need to vote on it.
So, I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bailey. All those in favour of those 4 forming the working party, please indicate. Unanimous. Thank you.
Can I just ask who was on it before then?
Councillor Blacker, Councillor Colling, Councillor Trevor Bellamy,
Douglas,
Councillor East,
Councillor Carr,
Councillor Carey, me.
you, that's right.
I think that's
About
it.
it,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's it.
So we've
Oh,
got-
there was somebody who was on it and didn't come. The one who joined loads
Oh,
of things and
yeah.
never came to anything.
Yeah.
Whose name I've forgotten.
So what I'm getting at, there's 2 of you that's on it again, so there's a good continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I suggest, sorry, last time we asked Rich to be a member of it, not to be the person taking the minutes and things, but to be a member to keep us legal, because he knows all the ins and outs and can say before we spend ages wasting time pursuing things, no you can't do that, or yes you can, or that would work better if you did this. If Rich is willing to be on it again, can I suggest to the other members that we ask him to join us?
How does that work with you, fit with your workloads? Client, are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely fine with it. I know that it did cause quite a lot of work for Rich last time.
But in some ways, well, in some ways it makes things easier because quite often the work will end up with me anyway, and it's easier for me to be there in what it is than it passed through other people, so I don't mind doing it.
Can I amend my suggestion to say this may involve some overtime?
I think that's probably a bigger issue to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to do overtime, so I just do toilet. But no, I'm fine doing it.
Okay, thank you. So if the members of the working group would just be cognizant of the time it's taken, the client's time that is. So if there's a need to be at everything, or whether or not there's an opportunity to just have some scoping discussions, that might help. Okay, so to move on to item 8, to consider a recommendation from the Service Provision Standing Committee that potential rolling grants for Home Valley Patient Transport and Homely Business Association for the CCTV be transferred to Finance and Management Committee. Right. Councillor Bailey, would you like to elaborate on?
There's not a lot to be said really. It's common sense in that it seems it would better fit with FNM. In terms of what service provision's focus is, we really don't do very much with it apart from signing off.
Clive, can you just help us with the patient transport? Is there a budget line for that?
There is. There's £1,000 for it. I would make the point, Councillor, it probably might help you to have a word with them, because we've written to them. How many times have we written to them, Jim?
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're trying to give them the money for this year, but they never reply.
Can you copy me into it?
Yeah.
Because
If you wouldn't mind doing like we've just said and give them a nudge.
Yeah.
Because all we want is a report on what the money, what they use the money for and what it's achieved essentially. Because we want to give them the £1,000 for this year, and we want to plan for the £1,000 to give them next year.
Yeah. So copy me into it, and
Yeah.
I'll speak to the deputy practice manager on this.
And then the CCTV.
There's a budget line for that.
There is a budget line, but it's in up to this year. It's been coming from an earmark reserve, but there'll be very little left. There won't be enough left after the February award, which is still going to be with service provision. But it'll all be part of this. I mean, I've factored it into the budget calculations anyway. I know you haven't agreed to it being a rolling grant yet anyway, and I suppose that's for you to consider once,
So will that be with us in February?
That will be with service provision in February. The decision would then be, I said to them, you could make the decision for their decision to be carried over to finance.
Okay.
If at the January meeting of this committee, that's an agenda item, that their decision is effectively this committee's decision about it becoming a rolling grant.
Well, we can talk about it at the time,
No, I think rather than debating it twice, I think just one committee needs to make that decision if it then passes over. I'm comfortable with that.
I think so.
So on that basis, I'm taking that you're proposing
Yes.
this, Councillor Bailey, and I'm happy to second it. Do we have any contrary views? All those in favour then, please raise your hands. Thank you.
Can I just make a point about how this works with the budget? I mean, in terms of rolling grants, YLCA said that we basically need to kind of separate off rolling grants into an earmark reserve. So in terms of the budget reports thing, I've kind of separated all the rolling grants we've either created so far or might create like these two, which is basically Arts Festival, Folk Festival, Cliff Rec. Is there something else as well? But essentially, in terms of the budget calculations, I've kind of separated them out of the budget lines and into an earmark reserve.
So how many multiple years have you put in the earmark reserve for each?
No, just 1 year. But then what YSCA says, they say you have to include it in your financial regulations that the money is there for this specific purpose.
So load it up, take it out. Load it up, take it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Thank you. So, item 77 then, chairs expenses. So to note, the chairs expenses budget is £1,000. So far, £28 has been spent. It's cheap to run.
You've been splashing out there.
Frivolous.
I think we'll find, Councillor Collins, that Councillor Black hasn't spent a penny. The £28 of expenditure is incurred by yourself.
Doing what?
Attending the having
Oh,
the
that
charter dinner. Yes.
There will be some further loss.
You've got a lot of munching to do. Anyway, but yeah. So item 78, schedule of payments. To consider approval of the draft month to date schedule of payments for November. And that's appendix. Is it all that? Yeah, appendix.
Yeah.
Is there any on? There's a couple highlighted.
So it's only really the yellow ones, which are two things to do with the cycling festival and poo bags.
Do the two run together? That'd be brilliant, that, if we could strap poo bags to the front wheel of bicycles. Yeah. Well, but they'll have to ride a footpath then, won't they? Oh, maybe not a good idea. Okay. So is there anything you want? Are those the ones that just haven't been paid yet? Is that what we're saying for those four?
One of them is paid because we were late with it, so I just paid it because so I missed it.
So we're happy to approve those payments. All in favour? Thank you. So item 79, financial statements. So that's P, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say an awful lot about these because most of the information about finance comes up in the budget stuff more importantly, I think, but other people might have comments.
Okay, so for 79.1, we've got items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Clark, Deputy Clark, have you got anything to comment on any of those now?
Not particularly.
Okay. Do we have any questions on any of those now? Are we happy to receive them all? Yeah, lovely, thank you. We'll move on to 79.2 now. So again, we've got 1 to 9. Deputy Clark, have you got any comments to make? Does anybody have any points or queries they wish to raise? We'll receive those as well. Thank you. Do we need to vote on those, or we'll just receive them? Item 80 then, tenancies. Okay. So, are we all okay for the clerk to remain in the room for this item? Got no concerns over that? Okay. So to consider the charges to tenants for 24-25. The current prices are garages £100 for a single garage, £200 for a double. Allowable plots, £25 for a half plot, £40 for a full plot. And the garage side building, currently without a tenant, we're looking at £400 a month. So in years past, we've asked for, I think William Sykes has given us an indication of what they've thought. Have we had anything like that for this year, or are we making the determination ourselves?
I don't think we've heard anything from. We've done nothing in terms of that approach to it.
Okay. So, do you have any suggestions you'd like to offer to us?
I don't know whether I've got suggestions. Only things that are obvious to you, I would imagine, as a group, that we've had 2 failed tenants in the last few years at £400 a month. In terms of the other tenancies, I mean, we're in a slightly difficult position because we just put one of them up last year, i.e. the half plots in the allotments. So we're in a slightly odd position if we decided to do anything this year, you know, with all of them or with the rest of them. I'm not sure. I mean, the thing is about these, I mean, they're a drop in the ocean in terms of our budget. They don't, it's more a service than it is real income.
Let's go through the garage sites then. So we've got three plots at Honway, Thurston Road. Where are the other ones?
Yeah, they're on Dover Road, which is up Dunford Road by the Indian takeaway.
Oh, okay. So how many have we got up there?
It's just one.
I think we've got a double. I think we've got a double and a single at the moment.
It's just next to the Scout Hut.
Yeah, they're near there, that road going down the back of where.
So, members, does anybody have a view or an opinion to offer? Councillor Wilson.
Well, I mean, if I'm right in what I'm reading here, we haven't upped the price of the garages since 2014. We don't want to fall into this chapter with suddenly realising we need to put them up by 100%. Especially a little bit at a time, isn't it?
Yeah. Councillor Hobbs.
And if there's a waiting list for them, then that's a good reason for putting them up a little bit as well.
There's only one person, and that is the clerk.
So just to put it in context, I think the tenants at the 3 Honway ones have been the tenants at Honway for 20 years. But no, there's a couple of, well, the fact that there's only 2 sites, there's 3 at Honley and 2 at Dover, so we're currently drawing 300 off of each of those 2 sites. And I've got to agree with Councillor Wilson, there is that danger of you keep it level, and then when you actually do have a rise, percentage is astronomical, although the reality of it could be something quite different. So I'm happy enough to see a meaningful rise on these. Do we have a view, Councillor Bailey?
I propose that we increase the garages and the allotments by 20%. It's still not a large amount. Well, sorry, I'll propose that for the moment.
For 20%. Okay. Councillor,
May I ask, the garages, how much maintenance do we have to put into those?
No, we don't actually own the garages, we own the land. So it's down to them.
So we have a sort of negative input.
So if it was a garage rather than a garage space, I would have expected the rentals to be a lot higher. Which is why they are as they are. When we had the ones up at Cliff, this was more for the land charities issue, was that when they moved off, and there was, shall we say, garages in a poor condition, some of which had asbestos sheeting, then reminding the previous tenant that it's their garage was a different matter at that point in time. Because nobody was particularly keen to take the garages with them. But these are just garage plots. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Bailey's proposed 20% increase. Do we have any other views? Do we have a seconder at 20%? I'll take Councillor Wilson for that. So all those in favour for the garages and allotments to go up by 20%, please raise your hand. Thank you. That's unanimous. The outside building. Okay, so the previous tenant, I think, shall we say, the business plan was lacking. What was the issue with the current one?
Not making enough money out of it, basically.
What was he doing? That was the vintage clothes, was it?
Yeah, so he set it up first of all to use it really is a store and to try and set up a sort of online business where the clothes was being photographed. And then it went to a somewhat different model where it was open over the summer for take advantage of festivals, and it was selling second-hand vintage sportswear that sort of was hoped to appeal to younger people, but it just, I mean, we didn't have a good summer weather-wise for attracting people in, but it just wasn't profitable.
It made a good grotto on Saturday if Councillor Fenwick had been available.
I'm not going to comment. Councillor Greaves.
So, I don't know. Councillor,
I remember.
I think if I could propose to not do something, if you're going to propose that we leave that at £400, it's for the reasons of the class. So it's a curious place. It will work perhaps for the right tenant, but it's just finding that tenant.
Yeah, I think it might be that. Councillor Collins.
Can I suggest that we aim for this amount, but that it's better to have the tenant paying less than nobody in there paying nothing, so be open to negotiation.
And I think that has come up already in some of the discussions actually, you know, because depending on how long the lease, we're looking at all sorts of things.
So, who's dealing with it? Is it the clerk or the deputy clerk who's dealing with it?
It tends to be the clerk.
So, have they moved all the gear out, Jen?
There are still fixtures and fittings there that they would need to move out, but I've got an ad hoc arrangement with them that when they need to move it out, they will.
Okay, and have we advertised it as being available for later?
We've not, but service provision agreed an advertising budget to move forward with that if we need to.
So the day-to-day for this then was with service provision, isn't it? Yeah.
It is,
All
yeah.
right, well, I think from F&M's side, sticking with the £400 a month rent is fine. I think if service provision in securing a new tenant, they'll have to form their own view on that. And I'm sure that the clerk and deputy clerk will be able to guide you if there's going to be any negotiations over rent. Members, are we all happy to take the no increase on the outside building? Yeah. So by show of hands, then please. Item 81, the Civic. So to note the report, which is listed as R.
Can I just check, Chair, there isn't any more to that now, is there? Because there was some talk about there possibly being further updates.
Yes, they're listed, I think they are listed in the report. Following reports are currently being prepared. I've not heard any more about the structural condition report that was anticipated for last week. There's been nothing further on that. But the conditions survey, that was anticipated to be available this week, but I've not heard any more.
So for my money, I think all the report really says is there's more reports to come. We don't have a decision to make on this, do we? Just noting.
Yeah, you just noting.
Yeah.
It's more there to inform the committee when you're looking at the budget in terms of the EMR being suggested for the Civic and also the budget.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Councillor Wilson.
I would say it's not as bad as I was expecting. I think most of the issues that's been flagged up so far, and I know there's one to come, but most of them seem to be the ones that we knew about anyway.
Yeah. I'd say it's a half full.
Yeah.
Do you have any other comments on this item? We'll move on. So, item 82, the budget. So, up to this point, we're running ahead of time. Rich, how are you wanting to do this? We've got a lot of documentation to go through.
Well, I think just let me talk for a bit and make some suggestions, and how you decide to go from there. I mean, I think perhaps, you know, I'd have said further down whether you want to basically suggest a couple of different budgets to council for them to choose from.
Okay, well,
that is one option.
Yeah. Councillor Blacker.
Perhaps just before I get into the detail, I just wanted to recall how far thanks to Rich for he's done a huge, absolutely huge amount of work on this, and I think in a way he's made it as easy for us as we can in terms of the clarity of his presentation. I'd like that to be phoned and recorded.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to write it down. Yeah, thank you very much, Rich. I know it's.
Any more votes on it?
I think we all share that view, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so, Rich.
Yeah, well, I thought so. If we go to I did 3 planners for you. So the preset planner version 1 is essentially how things will look. If all the if the budgets and the earmark reserves that have been requested by committees and where I kind of rationalised the council budget, how it would look is £10.13 on the household charge, which is obviously quite a lot. I'll explain how this works.
Just out of the current household charge at Band D is
it's currently £27.18, and so without doing anything corrective to it, it will be £37.31. Well, I'll just go through and explain why that's the case. So how this works is that the pink box in the top left hand side, that's the money that we had at the start of the year. So it's basically the money we've got in the bank account, split into general reserves and, as you can see, about 10 earmark reserves. Then that total figure is picked up in the green box, and then under that is the money we received this year, the precept of 284,924, and then other income than the precept is 21,366. So we've got positive credit of 559,567. This is basically coming from the white budget plan, page 2 of them. Where you can see the projected expenditure is 409,446, which would leave projected general reserves and earmark reserves of 150,121. The problem we've got is in terms of the earmark reserves that have been requested by the committees, that is £144,669 laid out there. Which would leave earmark reserves of only £5,452, which you can see from that percentage figure is only 1.78% of expenditure, where it's meant to be 25%. So that's obviously quite problematic. The point about the 25% is that that's meant to be our contingency. If something went wrong and Kirklees, for whatever reason, couldn't pay our preset, the contingency is there to have 3 months where our staff are paid, the toilets are paid, the buses are paid, everything else is done.
If that's 75 grand.
Well, I've got 83,452 here. So basically, how you get that up to 25% is by contributing to the reserves from the precept. So by randomly punching figures in, it tells me that £78,000 would be needed to make that 25%, and that will translate into £37.31 charge and an increase of £10.13 in the current charge.
So that £10. Okay. So the issue you're trying to solve there is about having sufficient reserves, and to do that, because of the rate we're drawing them down, we're looking at a £10 increase, which would be 35% increase on precept. Okay. So perhaps an alternative one would be to actually not allow that degree of earmarking of reserves.
Yep.
And then we would actually have money falling into general reserves, therefore we wouldn't need to raise as much.
Yep. Shall I go on to the two next ones? Okay, so the two next ones are ways that we can.
So just to clarify, under this proposal, does this
This
also
is
incorporate?
this is not a proposal.
Is
this is the way things.
Okay, so is this right? Is this just talking about the reserves? Does this also does that £10 increase also factor in spending plans on the main budget? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is. I didn't really write this with the expectation that it would be considered as an option. It was just put there to show you and potentially council what the actual cost of the budgets requested by committees and the earmark reserves requested by committees. And then the two next versions of the budget plan, I've just tried to suggest a couple of things where, in my opinion, it doesn't really affect too much. I mean, every time you do things differently with money, it costs you in a way. But I just want to put these two things forward as a way of making a suggestion of cutting expenditure, basically. So the first one is about spending money this year, or rather, in a sense, not spending money this year. And what I was going to suggest was that this committee could agree to spend money from its community assets pot on this building, on the roof. As you're aware, there was no specific budget line for the Civic in terms of development this year, but they were told that they could come to this committee to ask for grants to repair things. Now, obviously, this is the cost of the roof, which is 22,000 before tax, is rather more than this committee would normally be allowed. But you could refer it to council as a suggestion. What that would mean is that the expenditure, projected expenditure this year, which was so the projected expenditure, which was 409,446, if you did as I'm suggesting and pay the sorry, I've got so many bits of paper there. Pay for the roof out of community assets budget, that would come down to 386,956. That would mean that general reserve would go up to 62,000. Earmark reserves would go up to 27,942, and that would be 9% of expenditure, whereas before it was under 2% of expenditure.
Which item are you looking to push up there? That?
No, you're bringing down expenditure.
Yeah, and where's it going to?
It's turning up in general reserves.
So we're spending this year's money instead of next.
Yeah. And the point is, because Case is going to recommend wiring all that money, you're still left with quite a lot of money in the community assets pot of, I think it was £26,000, which is about half of the annual budget anyway. Which, as soon as you've got one cycle of grants in February, having 26,000 in February seems quite sensible to me. That the other 22,000 could be used more sensibly to top up the reserves. So that's suggestion A. The next one is about the playgrounds budget. Now that, in terms of that, obviously there's 50,000 in the budget. In the earmark reserve. However, service provision voted to to not decide what to do with the 15,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, until February.
That's deferred until February, so that can't really be part of the calculations. But there's another £35,000 there, which if that was basically dissolved and became part of general reserves, that would take general reserves up to £62,942, and that would mean the percentage is 20.55%. So obviously you're a lot nearer 25%, and that would be an increase of only £4.44. So you're getting to a more manageable territory.
On a similar theme then, are there any of those other earmarked reserves that could be easily removed?
Well, that's not really for me to say. I suppose that's for you to say.
Okay, so there's some of those that are spoken for and need to be retained. So the rolling grants one.
Yeah.
And there's 15 grand on children's playground, which is already spoken for. But some of those other ones, there's some room to manoeuvre. I guess that depends upon what our appetite for that is.
Yeah.
But the more we hold in earmarked reserves, the more we transfer from earmarked reserves to general reserves, the less pressure there's going to be on precept.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just so I understand what you're saying, are you talking about earmarked reserves from this year or the proposed ones for next year?
Well, it'll be which ones actually get transferred over and which don't. So if you like, there's 50,000. So let's take playgrounds for example. There's 50,000 there now. What I would be suggesting is that 15,000 is carried forward for a decision to be made. The other 35 would just drop into general reserve. It'll never make it across next year.
Yeah, which is what I think. Is that what?
That's the suggestion.
So there's a point of order. We're not reviewing the policy decisions made by each of the committees at this stage, or at all. Presumably, it can be done at full council, but it can't be done here, can it?
Well, no, I think you can. I think you can do it. I mean, last year there was definitely horse trading that went on last year, wasn't there? I think that's fair to say, isn't it? At this stage, yeah.
I was thinking about the scheme of delegation, not by what happened last year.
Well, I think in the fullness of things, finance and management could make the recommendation to full council. It'll be up to full council to decide it, and full council trumps all. So.
Yeah, no, I that's the thing I was saying that. I could see that full council might question some of this, but I wasn't sure it was the remit of F&N.
Yeah,
we can.
You can too, yeah.
We can.
Yeah.
So, for example, the defibrillator at £2,000, is there actually a need for that, or is that just being one that's been retained?
I think that.
I'm not sure actually. I'll be corrected by anyone here because I was curious about that as well. My understanding is that it's money that needs to be there should one of the defib machines get used, and then need to be restored.
Service provision are due to look at defibrillators at their February meeting. We're going to receive a report. There are some, as I understand it, the parish council has given grants for some of these defibrillators, but has not necessarily got a management responsibility for them. But I'm going to report on that to service provision. I think it will be similar to the situation with CCTV, where other bodies manage the defibrillators, but probably would want to come to the parish council if there were repairs needed.
Yeah.
But you can talk more about the Honley ones, councillor, because I know they sort of took care of their own in the end, didn't they?
Yeah. So when a defib unit is used, you need to buy the new pads. But the new pads are, I don't know, 25, 30 quid, something like that. So £2,000 is just earmarked really way beyond what the scope would be. And if is there a budget line in service provision for defibrillators? Yes.
Yeah, there's no money in it, but there is a line.
So this is perhaps one of the awkwardnesses about how things have happened over the last few years, whereby because because we've had ample reserves, we've been putting money aside rather than working things out. And this is the crunch year, and you can see that clearly from where we're at with this. You know, so current spending plans 400, just under 410 grand, preset just under 285,000. So that's a massive gap. You can bridge that 1 year. Then what? So I think, to my mind, we need to go through those earmarked reserves and really hack them out where we can do, because that takes a lot of pressure off of what we need to find. But there still needs to be a question mark around those individual committee budgets, and that's probably going to be a debate at full council. But just bear in mind where we're at. If we don't start chopping and changing, where did you say the playgrounds brings us down from? It's from a 10 quid increase to
£7.13 to £4.44.
Okay, so that alone makes a big dent in the.
Well, that's two things. That's the playgrounds and spending from the asset budget on the roof. So that's cumulative of those two things.
Right. So, and they just help us out for 1 year, don't they?
Yeah.
Just on council. I'll come to Councillor Wilson.
And really, that was a point I was going to make. I'm not saying they're not valid doing these things, they obviously are, but we're not getting down to the nitty-gritty of reducing our outgoings of it. We're just finding the money that's being squirreled away somewhere to put ourselves another year.
Well, to me, I think we need to do both.
Yeah.
And you know, the starting point with reserves is what's been earmarked and what hasn't.
But you know, the other point is you seem to be starting from the starting point that you don't want to raise the precepts, but the fact is,
I think the precepts are going to have to rise. It's the extent of it.
Yeah, fair point.
And I'll lay the cards on.
How much rather than
I'll lay the cards on the table. £27 to £37. I have got no particular desire to be on the front page of the newspaper.
Oh yeah, no, that was.
And that's exactly where
that wasn't put there as a decision to be made. That
No,
was put there
because that's how the numbers crunch. And that more than anything, that more than anything is the point of it. That's how the numbers crunch, unless we really start pulling it to pieces.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Packers first.
I mean, we have done, there has been a bit of hacking, hasn't there, with the EMR? If you look at quite a lot of that long list, looking at version 3, actually got zero against it. You know, we have hacked away at this quite a lot. That was one point I wanted to make. The second one is I do think that when 50,000 was set aside for children's playgrounds, it was in a completely different situation when Kirklees did not have money for, or wasn't spending money on children's playgrounds. So I've said this before, I think that should go back into the remaining 35,000. It should go back into general reserves. And I think we need, I do think we will need to raise the precept this time by, my feeling is by a modest amount. But given that the parish council has become more active and taken on more responsibility, doing a lot more this year, I would be really loath to see any of that cut back if we can't possibly do it. I can see this is a bit of a fudge perhaps for this year, and we'll be back here next year saying the same things. But I think there's a lot to be said for what I could understand of version 3. And an increase in the precept of 459, isn't it?
Councillor Bailey.
I move version 3.
It's actually 444. It's not 459. I found a mistake in where I'd there was a 1,500 that I put in the budget, which was just a duplication. So it would actually be, as it stands, it would be £4.44, I think.
Yeah, I move version 3. I mean, if there's a seconder, I'll speak to that.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I guess it's the case that the precept hasn't increased for quite a number of years, and it would seem sensible to have a small increase incremental, maybe over the next few years. I mean, as a a result of costs increasing, inflation, then the money isn't in real terms worth the same amount, even in terms of grants, etc. So I don't think it's unreasonable to have that sort of cost of living incremental increase in the precept. So rather than like one big one, maybe over a few years to increase.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw attention to that, the report, average band D council tax level set by the parishes, where the average band D charge in the country is £79.35. Obviously, this parish council is only £27 currently, so it's £52 higher. The average is £52 higher. Some of them are hundreds of pounds higher. In terms of the change over the past 5 years, the average is plus £15.31. For this parish council, it is zero. So it's a big difference. However you want to look at it.
Councillor Conn.
2 points really. One is we keep thinking in percentages, but £27 a year is about 60 pence a week. If we doubled it, it would only be £1.20 a week. Now, I'm not suggesting we double it. I know the papers would use percentages and it would look bad. But if people can't afford £1.20 a week, they're not paying council tax at all. And specifically on the defibrillator, I think the optics of saving a couple of grand on something that saves lives isn't worth it for a couple of grand.
Okay.
Now, I just want to advise really not to rush to a motion on this. You've got plenty of time on the agenda, and what you don't want to find is that you voted through something that actually, as a discussion, you then have to live with. So I would take your time before you come to consider motions.
So let's just draw it back. We've got another 45 minutes on this item as planned. Thank you.
And the other suggestion was that you make a couple of suggestions. It doesn't need to be just one thing. You could come up with 2 or more.
Councillor.
Can I also throw in the issue about inflation on this, because it's not really built into this. It's been mentioned by the RFO, not calculated in. And I look back, and they've got Bank of England figures. If you go back over the last 4 years, during which time there hasn't been any increase by this council in the precept, inflation's been 21.4%. So in other words, so obviously that hits directly, and we already take it into account with things like our direct costs. But in terms of the value of things that we give out, in terms of the £1,000 that's given to Honley Patient Transport, that £1,000 is now just worth £800.
To them, yeah.
To them, exactly. Yeah. And if we intended to give them £1,000, we really should have been raising that by that 21% over that period.
Okay, so just to respond to that, you're right in that inflation has increased, but actually, if you look at our budget lines, the cost pressures that we've faced have been more about existing rather than on doing what we've done. We've picked up additional responsibilities. So for an awful lot, we haven't had any increase, and that's a good example of it. It's been £1,000 and it has been for many a time. Yeah. So it'd be difficult to form an argument around we need to have a big increase to meet the inflation costs of the grants when those grants haven't seen a single penny increase.
No, that's exactly my argument. They should have had an increase. If we wanted to give £1,000 in real terms to that particular organisation, we should have been increasing it by inflation rate over time, and that will continue. I mean, the projections are that inflation will fall by the end of 24 and into start 25. But the truth is, up to this point, it won't go away what you've already had.
I understand the point. I get where you're coming from, but that's not the circumstances that has brought us to where we are with this budget currently.
It's a factor. No, it's not as to where we are now. It would have been even worse, actually, if we built that in.
It would be, yeah. It would be. Well, Councillor Wilson.
On grants, have we got the same amount in for next year as we have?
Well, only in the sense that I already said about the rolling grants. I've taken the rolling grants money out of the budget line 4415, whatever we're calling that, the projects and events budget line. So I think
We've got
that's
73.
I think that's
So are you money for effort, so the F&M grants rather than the mass reserves, yeah? Yeah.
Because we have talked about
Yeah,
with this
Yeah.
50-50 sort of approach with grants.
Yeah.
So might it be that we could say we could reduce the level of grant on that basis?
Well, so personally, I believe so. I also think some of that depends upon what the land charity chooses to do, and whether they might be filling a
you
gap.
can't really
That's in the mix of the
world.
world.
It's different.
But yeah, in terms of
We don't have to give those grants, do we?
No.
But don't we want to give those grants?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying we don't have to do. Some of the things we almost have to do, don't we?
Yes.
We have to pay wages and that sort of
Yes.
thing. We
Yeah.
don't have to give the level of grants that we have.
But what would be the point of being here and paying wages to be able to administer it if we gave nobody anything?
But we don't just do grants, do we? We're not just grants organisations.
No, but then we'd be very much out of balance with things like the larger items like on the library and the civic hall in terms of what they get from us compared with the smaller.
I'm not suggesting we stop giving
Sorry.
grants.
Councillor Blanca.
I think the grants are really powerful. I mean, just because we were admiring the responses, weren't we, earlier on, and I think that is one of the best things that we do. And of course, it reaches the parts that other people, other bits that what we do don't reach. And I just think it's an enormous advocate for what we do. And I would be really loath to reduce the amount of grants that we spend. And it's this thing about subsidiarity. It's the people that actually know what's happening, who draft the grant applications, and they know where the money's needed and what it's needed for. So I would be really love to reduce grants.
Councillor Holmes.
I completely agree with what Councillor Back has just said in terms of the grants being one very positive thing, as well as the other things that we do. But I think what's important is that it's not that we do want, I think we'll have to increase the precept, but that we have to be seen for being value for money. So I think that's the important thing, that we don't seem to be wasting it, but we're using it wisely and in a responsible way. So it's how best to do that. And I think, the precept, the increases in the precept are extremely small. You've just said how it's, 17p a week, if we go for the biggest
No, it's about
increase.
70, not 17.
Well, it's 60, in my reckoning, it was
£27 is about 60-70 pence a week.
and then it goes up to, I mean, it's still very cheap, and like you said, the people in real need aren't paying council tax anyway, so I do agree that you've got to avoid that very negative impact of increasing it
Council
too much
raises
all at
tax
once.
by 500%.
But increasing it is only increasing it a small amount.
I guess a bit for me, an element of it is it's not so much about what the percentages are, the amount. The actual core issue for me is the financial discipline that we've not had. And there's aspects of it that I feel like the budget out of shape. So we're looking at doing a 1-year budget, but Richard, if we go with option 3, how much money are we drawing down from reserves next year to support the budget?
Well, we wouldn't draw any down.
Okay.
That's
So we
that's
finish the
point,
year
isn't it?
with how much would we finish the year with?
25% of it.
In what sense do you mean? Do you mean the money coming over, left over from this year? Are you talking about the end of next year?
So when we start for
if you're talking about
25,
if you're talking about a £4.44 increase on the precept, that's about £45,000.
Yeah.
So that's a big chunk in terms of our income relative to our output. So that'll go up to sort of 340. So that will be to 340, and the expenditure is 333. So you'd be in credit by £7,000. Our budget projected for next year is 333,660. If we raise that by 45,000,
Where's that from?
that's income. That's other income.
No, the 409.
That's this year. That's our expenditure this year, 2023 to 24.
Councillor Cole.
I can't allow your previous comment to go unremarked, and you used the phrase "a lack of financial discipline." We had that expenditure was actually very disciplined. We were doing our duty. We had to spend that money. It was not. There was no lack of financial discipline in this council over that period. There was high expenditure because we had to spend it. We had too much sitting doing nothing. And I think it's an inappropriate remark to have made.
Okay. Councillor.
I was about to say more or less the same thing really. I'm not happy about take issue with this financially disciplined because we were required to pull down the reserves which were far too high, and in a way, and it's that probably allowed us to leave the precept as it was, and now we're facing that reckoning. We've more or less pulled down the reserves to where they should be, and we're having to make a decision about raising the precept. But it wasn't financially disciplined. It was planned. I mean, it was almost like a windfall, and maybe there were some elements that might have been outside of control, but it certainly wasn't financially disciplined.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Could I make a point again though about if we're just taking money from this year's reserves, we're going to have the same problem
No,
next year.
no, we're not. No, because you're taking it down in the precept. That's 50,000 quid from the precept.
No,
we will be in credit.
We're on about finding money from this year's budget, aren't we, to pay for?
No. Only in the sense that we've just talked about 35,000 from the playground.
Yeah, and the civic room.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing that, can we?
You won't need to.
Next year we're going to be facing.
You won't need. You wouldn't need to, because the precept is going up by about 50,000. It's more than the budget.
So the precept as it stands at the moment,
It's now it's less than the budget, obviously, this year by a lot. The next year,
so next year,
if you look at if the precept went up by, as we're talking about, 44,000 or whatever it was, it would go up to 204, about 230,000 plus.
that's version 3, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
230,000 plus the other income, which has got over 21,000, so that's 350. Whereas the actual budgeted expenditure is only 333,000. So you'd be in credit by 17,000.
Okay.
That's how it's laid out here.
Let me just take a step back. So the projected expenditure for this year is 409. But we've got committees increasing their budgets, and yet
No, they haven't. No, the only one that's gone up is service provision by 10,000. The others are all down.
Apart from us, and we haven't said how
Yeah,
much.
case is down by about 20,000. Planning is down by a few thousand because they've got a very small budget anyway.
where's the other 50 from?
What do you mean?
Well, we've gone from 409,000 to.
That's not budget though. There's a lot of overspending in there. There's a lot. The roof is in there. The fire escape is in there.
Okay.
That's not in the book. That's not budget. That's excess to the budget.
Right. And that amounts to what? £50,000.
In what sense?
Excess to the budget.
More than 50,000.
Okay. So we had a budget plan for the previous year.
Yeah, but there's lots of things that came out of that we're just going to have to say no. We're not going to pay for the topograph. We're not going to pay for these extra money on the topograph. We're not going to pay for the roof. We're not going to pay for the. These are different.
Can we add in here? Sorry, can we add in here the issue with Civic Hall? There wasn't a budget in this past year for the Civic Hall, so everything that was being called upon had to come out of general reserves.
Exactly.
Is that right?
So
going forward, what we're saying is, and that's in the proposal for the budget, is that there is a budget line and an EMR specifically for the Civic Hall. Now there might be debates about how much is in those lines. It's being more, exactly what you just said, being more disciplined.
So that's effectively 40,000. So basically, last year was there 10,000 for the trust, or was there nothing for the civic? In terms of the plans, as laid out by service provision, there would be 10,000 in the budget and 30,000 in the earmark reserve, which is basically a contingency for roofs or other problems as they arise. So it's being protective of the assets of the parish council, I think, as Councillor Bailey says, rather than it going to the general reserve all the time, trying to patch things together.
Do you have anybody else wanting to make any comments? Are we happy to move towards a vote then? We've got Councillor Bailey's proposal. Do we have any other proposals? I'll take a seconder for Councillor Bailey then. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brooke, you're seconding this proposal? Okay. Right. So, all those in favour of I'm getting my wording right here, recommending an increase of
£4.44.
Please raise your hands now. Okay. All those against? Okay. That vote's carried.
Can I ask what you would have proposed?
What I would have proposed? Yeah. Okay. So, I think I would probably be looking at something in the region of a 2% rise, which equates to something like 50 pence. And I would have done that by stripping those earmarked reserves back quite substantially. And I would have also done it by perhaps, for this coming year in particular, holding some of those budget lines quite tightly until we've got to a position whereby our actual expenditure plans were matched up by what we were actually doing. Some of that is about, as Rich said, saying no, and we've said yes. I think there's a danger from that we've actually raised an expectation that people can come and ask and will get, because they have got. But that's the vote's been taken. That's the recommendation of this committee that will go forward. For me, I feel quite strongly that we've taken on some additional responsibilities without any doubt for that. But the one that could point a finger at to justify would be youth provision, and that increase, that 2% increase, would have actually met that cost. Most of the other ones, and Council Brooke.
Councillor, I agree with you that we should be looking to reduce the cost of and now giving more value for money, and that we have the ability to say no. My concerns are that the budget, if we don't plan for it now for next year, we could have a shortfall. So I would strongly agree with you that we should be looking to reduce those for next time around, so that it doesn't go up again. Even potentially a reduction that one there. But I do think without having that cover for the requirements for next year now, and planning ahead, I'd feel a lot safer that we just covered those costs with the smallest rise, which has been worked out to cover that one there. So that would be my. But I do share your view that we should try and reduce costs. So.
Okay. Right.
I would concur with that. I think we're in a position now where we've got an opportunity to do something to give us a bit of leeway in the future. But I do think we need to be tougher on what we're doing. The way the grant, we've already talked about the grant proposal, how we look at that and how we change that going forward. So I do think we need to be tougher on what grants we give out and on the earmarked reserves. And we're not going to go through all these now and work out which ones we should do and which ones we shouldn't. But I think for me, bear in mind they're supposed to be reserves. They're there for emergencies, not necessarily to use, otherwise can be part of.
No, that's not correct. They're not there for emergencies. They're there to fulfil projects. The general reserves is there for emergencies. The earmarked reserves are there for specific projects, essentially.
So, for example, on that defibrillator bid, £2,000, if it sits there for a while, that demonstrates that actually it's not serving the purpose of an earmarked reserve.
Yeah.
So I suppose the approach we bring to that then would be, well, is a reserve required, and if so, what would be the appropriate amount? So for some of that, then you'd be looking back into the history of it. Well, what has it been? So instead of £2,000, would it be more appropriate to make it say £500? Okay, but it all depends upon what the purpose of the earmarking was, and some of that moves with time, if you like. Anyway, so. Well, on the plus side, we're 20 minutes ahead. Item 83, internal control check.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mum ended up in hospital when I was meant to meet Councillor Lyle, so I didn't get a chance to do the internal control checks with her, so I'll have to make an appointment with Councillor Lyle in the next few weeks.
Item 84, banking. So, item 1, to note, Councillor Blacker, Colling and Greaves are now mandated signatories on the CCLA account.
Sorry, I meant to print those off so you can start signing forms, but I forgot. So next time I see you, I'll try and have those prepared. So that's basically, I mean, we never use that, but we never take money out of that account anyway, so it's kind of a formality really, but I'll print them when I see you next.
Okay. Item 2, to note, as per resolution, the Handelsbanken account was closed in September and the money deposited in the Parish Council's main HSBC account. Item 3, to note, RFO Deputy Clerk has delayed the movement of the Parish Council's main banking account to Unity Trust until the second instalment of the precept was paid. Is that coming in now? Are you on with doing the transfer? Has they got set up yet? No?
I haven't. I'm not on with it. I mean, that's the point. I was going to get through this meeting about the budget. So as I've said, I'm hoping to do it before Christmas.
Right. Item 4, to note, as per above, Parish Council 1st of November received the payment of £144,000, which is the precept and special expenses grant. Thank you. So item 85, financial records for the website. To note, September and October's have been added. Item 86, publicising the work of Home Valley Parish Council. So to consider recent events or news that the committee wishes to publicise via the Parish Council website or social media. So I guess the obvious one is the grant feedbacks.
Yeah, I've already been published. I mean, I've created a separate page for those, so you can just click on. If you go to the grants tab, click on there, and they do all come up. The ones that I've scanned in, which is most of them.
It may be the assistant clerk is already on with this, but I think we do need a schedule. And I think I said this previously. From now leading through to the end of this financial year, it really does highlight the range of stuff that we do, and I think it's picking up on this, showing that people are getting good value.
Yeah.
And that needs to be a programme, I think, at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. If you do end up raising the precept, then you're going to have to explain why that's the case with, like you said, showing value the money.
There's a lot we can talk about,
There's a lot we can talk about.
youth worker about to be employed on a range of things.
There is definitely a schedule.
Oh,
There is.
We just don't know it.
yeah. I saw the bench.
Do we have any other items? Okay. Well, 8:30.
Well done.
Oh,